Lesson 5.5 is dealing with absolute value equations. We know from our previous work that the absolute value of a number is written in such a way as right here. We've got the vertical lines, that is our symbol for absolute value. And the absolute value just means the distance from zero. And we know that distance is always positive. So here was your fill-in right here. An absolute value equation such as x equals 4 again is the equation that contains an absolute value expression. And the example we have here, absolute value of x equals 4, the two solutions are negative 4 and positive 4, because negative 4's absolute value is 4 and positive 4's absolute value is also 4. So here's a couple quick examples for us. We have the absolute value of x equals 3. So the solution here would be x equals 3 and x equals negative 3. Let me see what this is saying right now. Okay, so this should help us. X equals negative 3. And here the absolute value of x equals 15. So I know that x equals 15 because the absolute value of 15 is 15, and x equals negative 15. So we do have the two solutions there. Let's move on. When you're solving an absolute value equation, here's the setup of the equation. We're going to have the absolute value of ax plus b equals c, some value. A, b, and c are just real numbers. But c has to be positive or 0, because we know that you cannot take the absolute value of something and get a negative. When you set this up, however, you take off the brackets and set it equal to positive c, and you take off the brackets and you set it equal to a negative c, because just as like back here, absolute value of x is 3 and negative 3. So this is the same as the c value. So let's go ahead and try this one. The absolute value of 4x plus 1 equals 15. So the first thing I do is I just take off the brackets and set it equal to 15. And then I'm going to take off the brackets and set it equal to negative 15. So I'm going to solve both of these equations. So I would subtract 1. 4x would equal 14. And then I will divide, and 14 divided by 4 is 3.5. And I'll do it over here. 4x would equal negative 16, so x would equal negative 4. Now I'm not saying that my c value is negative 4. We're saying that x equals negative 4. And in fact, we can check this just to make sure that it's correct. So we'll put a little check over here. If I do 4 times 3.5 plus 1, I'm putting it into the original. I need to know, is that absolute value 15? Well, 4 times 3.5 is 14 plus 1 equals 15. So the absolute value of 15 is 15. So it checked. Let's try the other. Absolute value of 4 times negative 4 plus 1. Does that equal positive 15? 4 times negative 4 is negative 16, and then I have plus 1 equals 15. And so I'm taking the absolute value of negative 15, which does equal 15. So both of these are my solutions. Let's try a couple more. These are a little more extensive, and it says here when you rewrite it, you want to always put it in this form first before you start taking off the brackets. So this is first. The first thing I'm going to do then is eliminate the 3, and you cannot distribute over absolute value. So write that down. That's really important. You cannot distribute over absolute value. So I end up with the absolute value of 2x minus 2 equals 6. And now I'll do just what I did in the last example. So I take off the brackets and write it as is. And the second one I take off the brackets and set it equal to the negative 6. So 2x would equal 8, x would equal 4, 2x would equal negative 4, so x would equal negative 2. And these are my two solutions for x. Let's try another one. Here, the first thing I need to do is add 1. So I have 2 times the absolute value of 6 plus 5 equals 26. Then divide by the 2. So the absolute value of 6x plus 5 equals 13. Now I can go ahead and do what I did excuse me, in the last problem. So 6x plus 5 equals 13, and 6x plus 5 equals negative 13. When I subtract 5, I get 6x equals 8. When I divide by 6, I get 4 thirds. Oops, you can leave it as 4 thirds if you want to call it 1 1/3, that's your prerogative. Here I get 6x equals negative 18 when I subtract the 5, that's an 8. And so x equals negative 3. So those are the two solutions for this one. So a little bit more work. Oops, there we go. X equals negative 3, not 6x. Okay, now there are some cases where you have no solution. Remember, you cannot take the absolute value of anything and have it equal a negative answer. So here it says solve the equation if possible. So I'm going to divide by negative 6 first, and you get the absolute value of 10 minus 2x equals negative 4. No matter what I put in here for x and simplify, the absolute value will never be a negative 4. So this one has no solution. We don't just take off the brackets and make it negative and positive. When the brackets are still on, and if it's a negative, then there is no solution. Here, I'll try the same thing. I have the absolute value of 3x minus 8. When I subtract a quarter, I get a half, and that's positive. So it doesn't say that it can't be a fraction, it just says it can't be negative. So this one we can finish. So 3x minus 8 equals a half, and 3x minus 8 equals negative half. Ooh. Negative half. So we get 3x equals, when I add 8, I'm going to get 8.5. Divide by 3, and I get 2, it's 2.83 repeating, but let's see what that is. 8.5 divided by 3, that's 2 5/6 as a mixed number. Here if I add 8, I get 3x equals 7.5, and that gives me 2.5. I would accept this if you wrote it as 2.83 with the repeat bar over the 3. Alright, next we have a definition of absolute deviation. It's the number from a given value, the absolute deviation of a number x from a given value is the absolute value of the difference of x and the given value. In other words, we're saying the absolute deviation is we have some x value and we're going to subtract the given value. Deviation means how far away, so how far away is subtraction. So here's an example. Before the start of a professional basketball game, a basketball must be inflated to an air pressure of 8 pounds per square inch, which is psi, with an absolute error of a half psi. And again, absolute error is the absolute deviation of the measured value from the accepted value. They want us to find the maximum and the minimum. So the absolute error here can be a half. It equals the absolute value of x, whatever we're measuring, minus the accepted air pressure. And we want it to be 8. Must be inflated to within 8. So now to solve this, we'll just go a half equals x minus 8. and negative half equals x minus 8. When I add 8 to both of these, I get the first equation, 8.5 psi, and the second equation I get 7.5 psi. So the range here is that they can run between 7.5 pounds per square inch and 8.5 pounds per square inch, and that's okay in the basketball game. Here's another one. It doesn't have a scenario for you. It says find the values of x that satisfy the definition of the absolute value, yada yada. So we're going to go, the absolute deviation is 5. That equals x minus 3, the absolute value of that. So when we solve this, we get 5 equals x minus 3, and negative 5 equals x minus 3. If I add 3 here, I get an 8. And if I add 3 here, I get a negative 2. So in this case, this satisfies this information. All right, toothpaste prices. The average price of the brand of toothpaste that you buy is $2.49 for an 8 and 2/10 ounce tube. Depending on where you shop, the prices vary as much as 15 cents. So they want us first to write an equation. So the absolute deviation is 15 cents. That equals x minus the cost we're looking at that they give us is $2.49. So we're going to go ahead and solve this. We have the 0.15 or 15 cents equals x minus 2.49, and 15 cents equals, negative 15 cents equals x minus 2.49 or $2.49. If I add $2.49 to the 15 cents, it's $2.64. So we'll put B right here. It can range from $2.64, and if I take the $2.49 and add it to the negative 15 cents, it can go down as low as $2.34. So it can cost anywhere in between here because that's what it can vary. It says you have a coupon for 50 cents off 2 tubes. If you go to the store that has the minimum price, $2.34, how much are you going to pay? So 2 tubes at $2.34 each minus your 50-cent coupon. So 2 times $2.34 minus 50 cents is $4.18. What a bargain for 2 tubes of toothpaste. All right, this is the end of the lesson. I will post the assignment on the website if you want to start it, but it's not officially needing to be started until class tomorrow.